Good evening, everybody. It is now November 5th, just after the election, and this is Dallas Social Toastmasters. We are still online. Let me go over just a couple of things really quickly. I will be your Zoom facilitator for this evening. I just noticed that we did have a guest join us. Carolyn is joining us tonight. So everyone wave to Carolyn, and we'll talk with her later.
No.
We have all of our role assignments taken care of. Hopefully nobody's going to have any internet issues. If you happen to see Rob twice, you're not seeing double. He really is here twice. With regard to some quick navigation stuff, of course, we have a timer, and when you need to watch your timer, you will find your timer by going over one of the little pictures and hitting the ... and saying pin video. That will put the person in your view permanently until you unpin them, so that you can at least watch them for the timing goals. I'm going to go ahead and share real quick here in order to show how to get to our agenda. And well, now I have to move that out of the way. All right, so our agenda can be found by going to DallasSocialToastmasters.com, which is, of course, our local website. And from that, there are 3 columns. In the rightmost column under the members section, you will see current agenda. If you click on current agenda, it will bring up this agenda for this evening, which will cover all of the roles for tonight. There have been a few shifts, and I'll let Lee cover the shifts if he chooses to do so. But we do have a few role changes at the last minute. But this is how you find the agenda in order to follow along with what people will be doing this evening. And share. Our Toastmaster for the evening is going to be Lee King. I think that concludes all of my remarks. So I will go ahead and introduce Lee King, Toastmaster for the night. Lee.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. We do have 2 guests, it looks like. Manoush is joining us right now, and Caroline is also joining us. So please welcome them, and we will hear from both of them towards the end of the meeting. This evening, I will be your Toastmaster, which, for the benefit of our guests this evening, means that I will run this first part of the meeting, and then we'll shift through various other portions of the meeting, and each of those people will explain their roles as well. But this week's theme, again, for the benefit of our guests. Each week we try to have a different theme. This week's theme is actually on stress, and I think it's actually very fitting that this is actually National Stress Awareness Week. And obviously, it would go without saying that there was some extra stress added this week with the election. I think no matter which side of the aisle you're on, I'm sure that everybody is sitting on pins and needles, probably checking their cell phones every couple of hours to see if there's any new updates as far as how the election is going to turn out. But we're also in the middle of a pandemic, which also raises stress. In fact, I've read quite a bit of literature. It's actually starting to say, it's actually reading now, that not only are we in an epidemic as far as a viral epidemic, but we're also experiencing what they call the sleep loss epidemic, because a number of people are losing many hours of sleep worrying about different things, worrying about if they're going to have a job tomorrow, if they're not going to have a job tomorrow. They worry about how they're going to make ends meet, or there's just the added stress that all of a sudden we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, let alone what the holidays are going to look like. So for some people, this is actually a very stressful time, because this might be the first time that they'll spend all of the holidays without any family because of travel restrictions, or just the guidelines being that they are really recommending that you should not be in groups of 12 or more. And a lot of COVID cases are coming out of groups of 12 and more. And when you start to really sit down and think about things, you start to add people to your holiday party list, all of a sudden that number 12 comes very fast. And then you hear of the stories of people that are getting COVID and they're only in groups of 4 and 5 people. So there's a lot of stress right now. And I thought this is a good time to address that stress. Also, when we talk about stress, there are different types of phobias, and there are all different types of very interesting phobias. Anybody have any phobias that they've heard about that just seem unique to them? I mean, obviously, there's the fear of the dentist, but I'm sure there are many other fears. Is there any other fears that people think are unique? You don't have to suffer from them, but just you think it's a unique phobia.
I can't say that I have any for myself, but man, I really hate spiders, but I'm not afraid of them, but I really hate them.
That's a pretty common one. Yeah. Anybody else?
I don't remember the name of it, but I've never quite understood the fear of wide open spaces.
Yes,
That just seems very odd. I understand cramped spaces, but not wide open ones.
And I would add on that also, like fear of water, a really, really odd fear, but I know that there's people out there that do suffer from that.
What about the fear of public speaking? Isn't that the greatest fear?
That is the third largest fear. Yes, people do fear public speaking more than the fear of dying. So very interesting. One that I think is very peculiar is the fear of clowns. Some people have fears of clowns, and then after watching Stephen King's movie It, I guess I could see why some people would fear clowns. With that, I will now go ahead and lead into our duty holders for this evening. This is where there will be a few changes, but we'll start with the people that are here and confirmed and ready to go, and we'll start with our timer. Tanya, will you please share your role for this evening?
Good evening. As a timer, I am going to time the prepared speeches for the evening, as well as table topics and the speech evaluators. And the table topic, the goal is 1 to 2 minutes. And so at 1 minute, I will hold up the green card. At 1.5, the yellow card. And then at the maximum time of 2 minutes, I'll hold up the red card, and you have 30 seconds to complete in order to qualify for table topics. At the speech evaluators have 2 to 3 minutes, and I will also be timing the prepared speech depending on the amount of time for the prepared speech, the goal. And then at the end, I will give a timer's report to see who qualified. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Next, let's have our person doing double duties for this evening. Mark Sims, will you please share with us the role of grammarian and all counter?
As grammarian, I will listen for any type of grammatical lapses. And if I note them, write it down and report later on when called upon by the general evaluator. And I'll also be listening for any colorful phrases that you may use in your speech or your remarks. It really spices up what you're trying to say. And also as grammarian, I will introduce the word of the day. This is it, stilted. It's kind of pompous, stiff, unnatural. A example I have is a few years ago when I had to work several states away over the weekend, rather because it was too far away to practically come back home. And the person that I was interacting with where I worked asked very strangely, instead of just saying, well, did you have a nice weekend on Monday morning? He said, did you enjoy your time in our fair metropolis this weekend? And some people just throw in a bunch of big words unnecessarily, are unnatural, stiff, kind of pompous sounding phrases, but it's usually a negative thing. So it's something you I think that Toastmasters would probably want you to use more practical language, but it's something, if nothing else, that we can all avoid. We don't want to be stilted. And I will hold that sign up during the table topics portion of the meeting because the table topics participants need to use that word in order to win the competition. I am also a counter. So if I hear some crutch or filler word, I will make notes and then report when called upon by the general evaluator. And Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you. Next, we will hear from our vote counter, Marcia. Marcia, will you please share your role for this evening?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. As vote counter, I will accept the votes through the private chat to myself and count the votes for the audience. The audience votes for the best speaker, best table topic speaker, best evaluator, and the best of the big three. The big three are the Toastmaster, the table topics master, and the general evaluator. I will record which person wins in each category. I myself will not cast a vote except in the case of a tie, in which I will cast a vote to break the tie. I will not announce a tie vote. Again, you will place your vote by sending a message to me in the private chat. At the end of the meeting, I will announce the winners. You may also send comments to each speaker, evaluator, and table topics participant by sending a private chat to the person directly. Thank you. Mr. Toastmaster?
All right. And finally this evening, we have a posture monitor. This will be the only change on the agenda for this evening. And since Devon was unable to attend this evening, Dagan will be our posture monitor. So Dagan, will you please share your role for this evening?
All right. As posture monitor, I'll be looking for, postures that distract from your speaking. Of course, it's a little more difficult to do here on Zoom since I only see, half or less of your bodies, but there's still opportunities when you're speaking. For example, when you reach up to touch your head or play with your glasses or something like that, that I can see that will distract from your speech. I will make notations and give my report at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Toastmaster.
All right, thank you. Just before going into our prepared speaking portion of tonight's meeting, just a little bit more about stress. A lot of times people hear that people that have chronic stress experience other symptoms such as getting sick more frequently, getting cancer, having other hosts of medical problems. And some people believe that that's more of a myth than truth, and other people think it's more truth than a myth. But it has actually been found that people that are chronically stressed, if you find yourself stressed a lot, you can have long-lasting effects. In fact, there is a whole study, and I took a course on this in college, and it's called psychoneuroimmunology. And it is the whole study of that whole process of how prolonged stress actually does affect the immune system. And when you have a suppressed immune system, you do stand an increased risk of getting an infection, taking longer to get well if you are sick, and also that can lead to cancer. Cancer cells that are in the body that normally can be fought off, if you're under a lot of stress, can't. And then that's how the cancer gets started. So if you find yourself stressed, it is definitely worth seeking help from a counselor or anybody, other people that might be able to help you through those times, because it really can impact your health, your physical health in many different ways, and your overall quality of life. So another reason why I think it's important to address stress and to bring that up this week since it's the Stress Awareness Week. With that, we do have one prepared speaker for this evening, and I will let that person's evaluator introduce their objectives for this evening, and that would be John Vessels. So John, will you please share with us Rob's speaking objective?
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Rob is speaking on as a first speech. This isn't his first speech by any stretch of the imagination, but the goals of this speech or the purpose of it is he's going to present a speech on any topic he wants to. He's going to receive feedback and apply that feedback when he repeats this speech at a future date. The purpose of the speech is to present the speech. And receive feedback. Never mind. The title of the speech is called Point of View. It's 5 to 7 minutes, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right.
Mr. Zoom facilitator, before you introduce me, Lee, Mr. Zoom facilitator, can you be sure to give me, I think maybe I have it, but maybe you need to give it to everybody. I need to share the screen for just a minute.
Should be on at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Lee.
So go ahead and please help me welcome Rob Giles with a few of a point, Rob Giles.
And Rob, please make sure that you have Tanya Howard, your timer, visible.
Okay, I don't know where that went, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that over. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. I want to tell you that we've had a lot of experiences and a lot of stress, as Lee pointed out, this past week. It's something that I think we've all felt to some degree over time, even months back, even over the past years, for some of us over the past 4 years. And this stress, this thing that we fight, and that, like Lee mentioned, ultimately can affect us over a long period of time, is something that is different for everybody. And for some people, maybe there's no stress at all. And it's really a matter of perspective. It's something where it can be physical, it can be emotional, and it can be informational or intellectual. Perspective can be affected by your past experiences. It can be affected by the context that we have for the particular moment that we are experiencing something. What it does is that it ultimately can change not only what we see, what we feel, and what we think. It can alter what we do moving forward. And one of the things that I noticed, and I think that a lot of people heard about this past week, was that over the past 3 or 4 months, we heard a lot of, I guess, polls and media telling us that former Vice President Joe Biden was going to come through, and there was going to be this massive wave across the country where people were going to be voting for him, and it was going to be an electoral landslide. And this was something that a lot of people viewed, and they thought this very well could happen. Look at the polls are showing it. But the polls were only one perspective. And regardless of what happens over the next week or so, we found that what they anticipated, what their perspective was, isn't necessarily what's happening and what we're perceiving now, what they're even perceiving now. And it's a little bit of a reflection even back in 2016 of what was projected and what happened. So perspective can change. Sometimes it continues to elude us as far as what we should really be looking for, but it definitely has an impact on our lives. And that's one example. On a lighter side, perspective, it's interesting because I know that there is stress as well. When I'm playing a game of Risk with my nephew, and I don't know how many of you know Risk, it's the game of world domination. But when he looks at North America and he sees his one little territory, and he has like 3 armies on it, and then he sees all of the other armies surrounding it, he probably gets a little stressed. And he's thinking it might be over for him and he might be down. That's his perspective. My perspective is I'm about to take North America. So it's a matter of perspective, is how you look at a lot of things in life. You know, when I play my brother in video games, hockey video games, he gets frustrated throughout. But due to my experience, I know that I'm going to be beating him handily, and therefore my experience is different. My perspective going into that game is going to be different. It's just an interesting thing how everything that we experience, the context that we have around us, and how that actually affects us, how that can determine the stress level or just what we're anticipating. It's an incredible thing, but we also can take those things and we can kind of turn them around and learn from them. From the polls, like I said, maybe we didn't learn quite enough. I don't know, or maybe the pollsters didn't learn quite enough. I want to bring up a time just a couple of weeks ago where I was in my apartment, windows were open, and I'm listening outside and I hear this repeated noise, like a little chirping. And I think, what is that bird? That bird's got to be right outside my window. And eventually, after so long, I got to go check this out. And I go out and I look outside, and lo and behold, on the tree, it's not a bird, it's a squirrel, which brought an entirely different idea into my head. And that squirrel was just standing there looking at my window, just doing his little chop, 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 chop. And it wasn't actually a bird chirping, but it sounded like it could have been from what I was listening to. It's a matter of how you look at things. But from now on, when I hear that, I'm not going to assume it's a bird. It may be a squirrel. Maybe it will be a bird next time, but I'll know that I don't know for sure. Another example, and this is something that also touches on, maybe if you want to say it's a political or a social issue. Let's say that somebody's out there and they're frozen, they're scared to death, petrified, they're standing there. Do they need a gun to protect themselves? It depends, right? Depends on the context. Well, if they have a spider in front of them, as Dagan had mentioned, he's afraid of spiders. He may be petrified. He doesn't need a gun to deal with it. However, if that person is standing there petrified and they have somebody running at them with a knife with the intent to harm them or kill them, then that's something where perhaps a gun would come in handy. So it's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of context. It's a matter of us understanding that not every situation is the same. We have to look at those things so that our perspective is better. One last thing. When I was a kid, my family moved from Buffalo, New York, down to San Antonio. And we all piled into our long station wagon. We sat in the very back looking behind us, looking at the traffic behind us. And we took that travel from Buffalo to San Antonio. But I was excited. I was 10 years old. I felt, I'm going to Texas. Oh my goodness, this is a great adventure. I never left Buffalo prior to that. Me and my brother had that same attitude. However, when my sister told me years later, when she left and she went down to Texas with us, she was scared to death. She thought she lost her friends. She lost her life. Now, granted, she was young too, but I had no idea. I was so caught up in it. But that was her perspective. It's amazing if you give other people an opportunity to explain themselves, or at least an opportunity, or at least recognize that perhaps they don't have the same interpretation as you, then that can change things. So keep in mind, keep an open mind and keep an open heart when you look at other people and what they're doing. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rob, for your speech. Very well done. If anybody has any comments, please feel free to send a private message to Rob about his speech. And then thought I would share just a couple of more facts or information about stress before we transition into our table topics portion of the meeting. But first, Madam Timer, did Mark qualify on his, did Rob qualify on his time?
He barely missed it, 7:42.
All right. So at this point, we would not, this is where we would vote for the best speaker. We only had one speaker for this evening. We wouldn't be voting anyway, but for the benefit of our guests, because because Rob went over on his time, and he would not be eligible for the vote for the best speaker this evening. Just a couple of things to think about when it comes to stress. If you do experience stress, what are some things that you can do about it? There are several. Some people find exercise as being a good way to relieve stress, going for walks around the block, doing something outside, perhaps doing yoga, Tai Chi, some of the martial arts are really good. A couple of other options on most smart devices. There are a couple of apps that can help with relaxation. Two that I use and I actually have helped my patients get set up on. One is Calm and the other one is Breathe to Relax. Those are also both really good apps that have a lot to offer as far as breathing activities, music, rain sounds, other ways in which people can relax. In fact, both of these apps have sleep modes so that you can listen to some type of soothing sound while you're trying to go to sleep at night. It runs for about an hour or 2 hours to help people go to sleep and stay asleep. So there are a lot of things that you can do to help reduce your stress that is not expensive, is enjoyable. Sometimes just going out for a ride in a non-crowded place is good. And then keep in mind that also other things have started to open up here in the Dallas area. So things like the Dallas Art Museum, the Arboretum, other museums in the area are all places where people can go and relax. The library is open. You can even go to the library and relax there if you enjoy reading books. If you're starting to get anxious because you've been cooped up in the house, you get that cabin fever. Just think of things that you enjoy and just realize that there are things out there that you can do to help you relax and feel better that don't cost a lot of money. And with that, I will now go ahead and turn the meeting over to our table topics master for this evening, Karen Lee. Karen.
The table topics portion of our meeting is a portion of the meeting where the table topics participant gets a chance to answer a question. And you do have to use the word of the day, stilted, in order to be able to qualify for the best table topics. And this is where you get to answer the questions off the top of your head. The first question is, do you participate in regular exercise? Why or why not? Mark Schroeder.
So the question is, do I participate in regular exercise?
Yes.
No, I participate in very special exercise. Oh, I'm just kidding. With regard to exercise, it is something that I do pretty regularly. Under COVID, it has not been as regular as usual. On an average week, I would say 3 days a week. With the gyms closed for such a long period and not particularly feeling safe going back into gyms because boy, did I pick the wrong year to do group exercise classes. But because of that, I started back running, which I have done for years and years. I have a subscription to Team Beachbody, which is a series of literally thousands of exercise videos. And so I will do those here at home. Sometimes I would even take and go into the club to be able to do those. On occasion, it was still appropriate for me to go in and do those in person in the club, even though I was watching it on my phone or something of that nature. So yeah, I've actually had a pretty good set of exercise regimens that I've gone through, typically between 3 and 5 times a week. Everything from running and cardio to Brazil butt lift to lift 4 with it. That's LIIFT 4, which is a weightlifting series. So just a little bit of everything, trying to keep a little bit of balance in my life, a little bit of balance in my body. I like the way it makes me feel. I don't like the way I feel if I don't get it done. So I hope that it will continue to be a part of what I do, and might even go do it after this meeting tonight. Madam Table Topics.
Okay. Another good way to combat stress is to eat a healthy diet. Eat lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. Tanya Howard, tell us about your diet.
Can someone time me?
Yeah, I'll time you. Hold on, let me. All right, I'm ready.
Okay. My diet normally it's pretty good. I do enjoy sweets every now and again, but this past week was Halloween, and we have been gorging on chocolates and sweets on a daily basis. And so it hasn't been very healthy trying to manage that and not overdo it, trying to restrain ourselves, but also trying to get through the bucket of chocolates so that we don't have to look at it on a regular basis. I don't feel stilted about the fact that I'm eating and enjoying all of these sweets, but I do know that it's not good. And with the winter months, I need to start managing my eating, or I'm going to put the weight back on. So I do need to be more thoughtful of how much I eat and what I eat, so that the winter months I don't hibernate and start putting on the extra pounds like a bear. Thank you, Table Topics Master.
Okay. One of the options for handling stress is deep breathing exercises. And so tell us if you've ever tried deep breathing exercises to relax. Why or why not? Marcia.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. I have tried deep breathing exercises. Now, whether or not it worked for me, I can't tell you the truth. I'll be fibbing if I tell you it made me less stressed. No, it didn't work for me. However, I am stilted about how I come across when I am stressed. I am aware of when I am stressed. And I do understand that breathing helps, given the fact that as an educator, and especially working with students with special needs and behavior challenges, and what's the first thing we tell a student? Count to 10, take a deep breath. But I cannot practice what I preach, right? So finding other ways to relax and release and relate, for me, not deep breathing, but music. Music for me is what helps me.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Okay. Now, would any of our guests like to try it? Manish, would you like to try a table topics question?
Yes, please.
Okay. I've heard this saying that laughter is the best medicine. Tell us, what do you do to cultivate a sense of humor? Munish.
Good morning, everybody. Laughter is the best medicine. Laughter, when we laugh, we release stress. It's very important to laugh 15 minutes a day. That helps to get rid of stress. Sometimes we have to do stilted conversation with our friends. That's very important too, apart from laugh. In our country, people go in the park when they do exercise, they laugh. Ha, 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 ha. But I don't find it very impressive. I find it unnatural. Sometimes we watch video on social media and that video makes us laugh. That's natural. There are some shows on TV or some movies when we watch that makes us laugh. It's very important to laugh nowadays. We have so much stress every day. Because of this pandemic also, people are losing their job left and right. They are worried about their future. We have to keep ourselves happy. We should read jokes. And there are people, those who have sense of humor out of the box. And those people, they are always surrounded with friends. Because everybody wants to listen to them. Everybody wants to laugh. Everybody wants to be happy. Who doesn't want to be happy in this world? That is the reason on TV, there are many people, those who perform these type of program, and people sit in the evening after finishing their daily business, they spend some time to make them happy. Even I also do. This COVID-19 taught me this thing, that we should always laugh. It has immense benefit of that. Thank you. Over to the Toastmaster, please.
Karen, you're muted.
Okay. Connecting with others is important, especially during the pandemic. When we're stressed, it's usually best because we may want to just stay by ourselves. So how do you connect with other people? Mark Sims.
This is an obvious medium using Zoom to connect for the Toastmaster meetings. And so I'm fortunate to be able to do it both for this club and also for a Grand Prairie-based club. And this is especially great because it's a freewheeling type of environment, not a stilted one where you can just relax, enjoy your time together. And then what has seemed to help at work is that we've gotten better technology than we did in the early days of the pandemic, where we use Microsoft Teams. And so you can have a simple conversation with a coworker without having to hold the phone up to your ear, that kind of thing. And you're able to see them on the screen. So that is so much nicer than email or phone calls, especially if there's something that's going to take several minutes you want to discuss. And then also I'm able to attend church services online, since obviously there's enough people that gather there. It's still not totally safe, in my opinion, to rejoin in person. So it is a difficult time, but with those types of options, we're able to at least maintain some type of connections that we would not otherwise be able to do. Madam Table Topics Master.
Okay, I was going to ask, did all of our table topics participants qualify on time?
Yes, everyone qualified.
Okay. And did everyone use the word of the day? Filter.
Tanya, Marcia, and Munish did, and I did not hear Mark Schroeder use it.
Sadly, no. I was quite keyed up and stilted and did not get it done.
Okay.
Until now, too late.
So Tanya told us about her diet and in regards to stress. And then Marcia talked about that she tried deep breathing, but music works a lot better for her to relax. And Unish was telling us about different ways that he incorporates laughter into his life to relieve stress. And let's see, Mark used the word of the day. He was talking about connecting with others. So go ahead and vote for the best table topic and send your vote to Marcia. And back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and move the meeting on over to our evaluation portion of the meeting, which will be led by Mark Schroeder. Mark, please take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Lee. So this is going to be the evaluation portion of the meeting. We have a couple of jobs during this. I will be doing an evaluation of the meeting as a whole and what I saw. I will also be calling on the speech evaluator for our speaker tonight, as well as our duty holders. And so that's going to be what all I will be doing. The first job that I will take on here is calling on our speech evaluator. The person who will be evaluating Rob's speech tonight is John Vessels. If you would, welcome John Vessels for his evaluation of Rob's speech.
Good evening again, fellow Toastmasters and guests, and especially Rob. So, point of view was entirely your speech tonight, and I clearly got from the very opening that you wanted to talk about different points of view. And so I'm kind of confused about the few part, but you did give us a few examples of how changes in perspective and attitude and context of situations change how we handle and absorb a situation, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. It changes because of what you're doing and what the situation is and how you take it. Like you gave us some good examples, like when you talked about the polls, and yes, where everybody gets caught up in the big election and all the stuff's going on, and to necessarily, which I did, by the way, necessarily didn't take everything polls say for heart, because it depends on who you ask, and polls change from perspective to from this group to this group and this group, and they can seem like the same people, and everybody's got a different answer. So I always take that with a grain of salt. It's like, well, whatever, and just wait and see what happens. Another example was playing your nephew at risk and how he seemed to be so down under, but then He never knew if he could take over the whole game with his one little spot right there. You get caught up in situations that put you on edge and you don't know where you're going to pull yourself out of. And do you really always beat your brother when you're playing video games? I don't know. But yeah, I'm sure that if you go play a game with somebody that always wins, it definitely puts stress on the person playing because there's a competition involved. They want to win, and it increases the stress that they experience in that life. So all in all, you gave us some really good examples of situational points of view, and depending on who we or how we take them will affect us differently. I know you talked about Dagan and that he doesn't like spiders, and while he probably wouldn't take his handgun to kill a spider, but yeah, if it was somebody that was coming at him, with a knife or something, he probably would. But that's a good example of how different situations, it's kind of the same situation, but in different contexts and different realities. So you expressed all those things really well. I thought you had a really good end of the speech. You wrapped everything up and brought it all back to a point to let us know that the situations we have, things can be adjusted just by the way you take them. It's all a matter of you putting it into the perspective that you need it to be. There we go. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
All right, thank you so much, John. At this point, let me go ahead and I will call on our duty holders first and then do the general evaluation of the meeting as a whole after that. So let's see, our first duty holder of the evening is going to be our grammarian. Our grammarian is Mark Sims. Mark, how did we do on our grammar tonight?
As far as grammar uses, I did not notice any grammatical lapses. Did notice several good phrases that help spice up your remarks. Rob, in his speech, he made reference to playing with his nephew a game about world domination. And I mean, that sounds like a serious game, by the way. I mean, you can't have just a simple, fun game with that family. I mean, the whole world's at stake. So, okay, count me out. And then Rob talked about a childhood memory when he was moving to Texas. The children piled into the long station wagon, and that it conjures up some memories that I have from my childhood. It's very well makes some old memories bubble up, good and bad memories of being crammed in the back of a station wagon. We use the phrase cabin fever, which unfortunately we can all relate to very well these days. Mark Schroeder, let's see, this didn't conjure up any images when he referred to teen beach bodies and a Brazil butt lift. I mean, no, that didn't make anyone's mind wander. And Tanya, to paraphrase her just a little bit, she noted that we don't want to hibernate like a bear, very sage advice in this time. As far as our counter roll, this was a very good night. I caught a few ahs or ums, you knows. Dagan used one in his role description early on. Rob used a superfluous, I guess, before a sentence. And at one time, I think he said that, as in repeated that. And Tanya, I believe I heard one during table topics, and that is it. Very good night for the lack of crutch words. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Mark. We have one more duty holder this evening, and if you're looking at our agenda, you will find that the person is not here, but our posture monitor tonight was Dagan Newland. Dagan, how did we do on posture?
Well, overall, I think we did pretty good. Based on the speakers when they were speaking, I did not see any issues. But if I were to do my posture monitor on the audience as they were listening, I probably would have had a whole list of things. But but I didn't know how to do that. So, but everybody that spoke at the time they spoke did a really good job, and I did not see anything that was, distracting from the speech. So back to you, Joint Evaluator.
All right, thank you, Dagan. Somehow that sounds like the week that I had left the gallery view on, and I was watching everybody to see how many times people touched their face, doing a public health check on everybody, which, if anybody remembers, the person who was touching their face the least is in the medical industry, and that was, of course, John. So it's good practice, good training. All right, so that concludes our duty holders reports, I believe, for tonight. Yes, it does. And so let me go ahead and do a general evaluation of the meeting. We got started very, very close to on time. If anything was a little bit late, it was me just because of getting the Zoom started. I had one file that I needed to have up on my desktop to describe my duties as facilitator that was not up, and I had to go get that. So I think we were easily, within a minute to a minute and a half, which is still quite fine as far as I'm concerned. Topics. I thought the topic for the theme was very good and very timely. It was also a very interesting topic with regard to everything that's going on right now. We are all under stress. I can't tell you how much stress I am under at the moment, but yeah, it's palpable. There's no question about that. With regard to the changes, we took care of most of the changes of roles before the meeting. And in fact, we even were prepared for some people to not show up that did, who got their roles back at the last minute. We only had one change, which was because Devon was not here. I like the fact that you also covered, when you asked for what people had in the way of phobias, I was a little nervous for you for a second while there was silence, and I'm sure you probably were too. But you did manage to get some people to open up with some phobias. I think part of the problem is when you think phobias, everybody's thinking arachnophobia, trichnophobia, blah, blah. And nobody knows the names of these things. So except for the ones you asked for, the weird ones, we know the normal ones. We don't know the weird ones. But it was a way of engaging the audience, and engaging the audience is important. That was one of your goals for tonight. I know that was. I like the way you split your comments and your content into bite-sized pieces, doing some of it before the roles and the duty holders, not reports, but the duty holders giving the description of their duties, and then some other information after it. That way it's not all in one large chunk, and it just seems to just flow a little bit better that way. With regard to my handwriting, I'm going to have to get better at that. With regard to the duty holders reports, there we go. The duty holders doing their descriptions, I thought everybody did a very good job of that. All of the duty holders gave a good and clear description of their roles. With regard to back to our Toastmaster, a couple of things maybe to consider working on. And they are just general ones for Zoom for a couple of them. Gestures is one. We all are having trouble getting our hands high enough. We're used to doing gestures that are going to land right below the level of what the camera sees, unless you happen to have a camera that is very far back. And Lee, you in particular sometimes might benefit by being a little bit farther back. I know there are also some vision issues having to see the screen and what have you. I would have the same thing when I've got small fonts. So 50-50. If you could raise your hands maybe a little higher, that might help just a little bit. The other thing that might have improved a little bit tonight, you were very, very smooth and very well organized, but maybe a little bit more enthusiasm on some of it. You had a reasonable amount, and it was not monotone, it was not boring by any means, but just a little bit more enthusiasm in your voice might have perked it up just a little bit. What else? Your tone overall was very conversational, very relaxing, especially under the category of stress. Relaxing was a good thing. There were absolutely zero, as far as I could see, technical issues with the media. That all went very, very smoothly. With regard to the word of the day was a very good word of the day that everybody was able to use except one person, and we won't say who that was. Then we can go to John as our evaluator tonight. John, as always, you do a very good job of evaluating. And one of the things that makes it so good is all of the specific examples of the things that you liked. None of this, there was a great job or it was a good job. You had very specific examples all the way throughout the speech of the parts of the parts that worked for you. I thought that was really, really good because that's the way we all learn. Mark Sims, during your duty holders reports, I like the fact that you added the humor into it, having to do with your comments about the world domination, keeps people awake and laughing. I also liked that you, rather than just talk about the comments, you talked about how the comments affected you with regard to good or bad childhood memories, such as the station wagon. So that's basically pulling in that emotional response. And I thought your comments with regard to the outcomes reports were also, on point and astute tonight. Dagan, let's see, what did I write down? Oh, I liked your comments about the audience. And yeah, it's true. Occasionally as Zoom coordinator, I will throw it into gallery view just so that I do it. What I try to do in some cases is as a table topics question is being asked, I will throw it sometimes into gallery view to see everybody's listening and reaction to the question. And then somebody gets called on and I put it back in speaker view so we get that one speaker. But it's interesting watching people's reactions while that question is being asked. They've ranged the gamut from rapt attention to yawns. Yeah, it's true. All right, so I think that is going to conclude in general my comments on the meeting. I thought we've had a very good meeting. I do wish we had had two speakers. In particular, I wish we had had our speakers cancel a little earlier. We did have our speakers have to bow out at the last minute, and it put us into a little bit of a rush trying to come up with speakers tonight. And I wish we had had a second speaker because it's always more fun when we have two. And it turns out we might have had one. We did have a volunteer in Manish, but we didn't have an evaluator on deck ready. And we did not know that before the meeting. So maybe next meeting. With that, I will conclude my comments for the general evaluator comments. I have one more duty that I have to do, which is to call for a vote for the best of the big three. And if you are one of our guests, you are welcome to vote as well, of course. Our big three tonight are Lee King as Toastmaster. Let's see, we have Karen Lee as Table Topics Master for the night. And my name is Mark Schroeder as the General Evaluator tonight. If you would, the person to send your votes to is Marsha Collins. So please send your votes to Marsha for one of the three for best of the big three. With that, first, I guess I have to ask Lee, do you have any closing comments or do I go directly to our business meeting?
We can go directly into the business meeting. Well, actually, so one interesting little fact I guess I'll share before going into the business meeting, just in case any of y'all were not interested, zebras do not get stomach ulcers. Anybody know why zebras don't get stomach ulcers?
I'm wondering if this is science or if this is a joke.
This is science. It really is science. The interesting thing about zebras is their memories are not as long as ours. They are aware of lions and tigers and things like that that will eat them. They know who their predators are. However, if they successfully run away from the predator, they forget that the whole incident happened within a few minutes, and therefore they have no stress in their life, and therefore they don't get stomach ulcer. So,
it's got to be doubly stressful when it happens each time, though.
I don't know. It was just in this class I was taking. That's one of the things in a continuing education course on stress. That's actually what they mentioned. And I looked it up. It is true. In fact, you can actually check out the book. There is a book written about it, and the name of the book is actually Why Zebras Don't Get Stomach Ulcers. So, if you need a good read, might be a good book to read. Let's go over to our president, Mark Sims.
Thank you, Lee. And for starters, I'd like to welcome our guest tonight. And one thing I want to note for the benefit of Caroline and Munish is that during the course of the meeting, when you saw us waving our hands, that's the best thing we can do about applause on a Zoom meeting, because most of the time you're muted, so you don't say anything or contribute any background noise. In real life, at our in-person meetings, which we've not been able to have for several months now, we will actively applaud, and it's a great way of bringing about energy in the room, supporting the speakers. But again, that's the best we can do in the circumstances. So it's basically our equivalent of applause. Very, very pleased to have Carolyn and Munish here. And I will start with Carolyn. If you'd like to tell us just a little about yourself, and then also just what can Toastmasters do for you? Because we definitely appreciate you coming tonight.
Yes, I've really enjoyed it. So I am from Memphis, Tennessee, and went to college an hour away to Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi. And somehow all of my friends ended up being from Dallas. So when we graduated, they're like, okay, where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna move to? And I was like, I guess I'm gonna move with y'all. So moved with them, and that's kind of another reason why I'm doing this. I avoided speaking. I took speaking online just to avoid it in college. It's not my thing. But it's also another reason my best friend that got me to Dallas, she is getting married and wants me to speak at her wedding of 400 people. But that's probably in light of COVID scenario going great. But I was just like, I got to figure this out. So I'm here to work on myself. But yes, I've really enjoyed it. So thank y'all for having me.
Well, thank you. And that is a very practical reason to want to get experience in speaking. And I can relate because some years ago, I joined a Toastmasters club because I had a really big presentation coming up at work and I was not comfortable. The experience you get here will be invaluable. So please do come back. If you reach the point you want to join the club, we definitely would be very pleased to have you as a member. And just keep this in mind, our location, whatever point that we are able to resume meeting in person, we usually have the meetings at Azona's Sports Bar, and it's close to the intersection of Greenville and Mockingbird. And our other guest is Munish from India. And Munish, kind of got the idea you know something about Toastmasters, so please tell us about yourself and what you thought of the meeting.
Good morning. I live in India. I live in north part of India, Jammu Kashmir. I live in a small hamlet. We do not have Toastmaster club in our city. I've been dying to become Toastmaster member for the past many years. Unfortunately, I couldn't. COVID-19 is a nuisance, madness, but it was a blessing in disguise for me. At the time of COVID-19, everything went online and I became Toastmaster member. I was incredibly ecstatic the day when I became Toastmaster member. Because I heard many times, I heard many videos, I read many articles. If you want to hone up your public speaking skills, communication skills, the best platform is to join Toastmaster. I became Toastmaster member 3 months ago. And in Toastmaster, in every meeting, I kill 3 birds with 1 stone. I hone up my public speaking skills, communication skills. Third, when the topic, like today the topic was about stress. This topic is very important in life. Every day person is facing stress in their life. And these things helps us to grow in our life. It's early morning in India. You made my day. I'm also facing the stress. And these topics helps. And it was incredible meeting. I really tell you, I really enjoyed. I requested for to deliver the prepared speech. Next time, whenever you have a meeting, give me a chance. I would love to speak about stress. I'll prepare, I will study, I'll go deep into this. Next week, I will speak about stress. Thank you. Over to the Toastmaster, please.
Thank you, Munish. Definitely appreciate you attending via Zoom. And yeah, we definitely will take you up on that. Appreciate your contributions tonight. Do you want to disclose to the club or let you know that I received from Toastmasters a ribbon? It's basically for the club for the prior term being a select distinguished club. Good job on that. While we're again not meeting in person, I'll carefully safeguard that. And before we announce the winners of the different competitions, is there any business that anyone wants to bring up? Mark.
Well, just a quick.
Mr. President,
Oh,
I would like to, go ahead, Mark.
I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
do
You're fine.
once again, we are going to end up having to change our Yahoo group email, the email that we use for intra-club communication in the near future. We do not have an answer yet. I got to get on that, and we have until roughly mid-December. So just, if you haven't heard that, you've heard it now.
Okay. Yeah, and you've notified us on that, so thank you. And Rob.
Yes, I want to remind, of course, it looks like I'm stuck here. This connection it's not 100%. Anyway, hopefully, it looks like I can hear you guys, but I can't see you moving. So anyway, hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you.
What I wanted to do, I wanted to remind everybody that I have member orientation. That it happens on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Central Time, and it can run from anywhere. Okay, so it looks like I just got disconnected, but it runs for about 30, 40 minutes, or even sometimes longer. But I will send out an email with the link. I'll do that this evening, but it's the same link that I use every week. So if you go back to a past email, you're going to find it there. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Rob. And I believe I've asked you before if this is just for our club or do you do it for the area or district? And if not, then that would be terrific. I know they would be thrilled.
I don't advertise it, but anybody is welcome. And partly because I don't want to. I don't know. I want to make sure that I can really devote my attention to our members first. I think that's my first main goal. There is a District 50 member orientation, and it doesn't go over everything that our orientation will go over, but it is like I think it's on the 13th of this month, and then on the 11th of December, and it's listed on our calendar on our website. So you can go there and there's links there to their calendar, and there's links actually to every Saturday for us as well. I'll shoot a message out to Mary to let her know, but I don't know that I really want to spread it out further than that. If it happens by word of mouth, then I'll deal with that as it happens. But I want to make sure that I'm available to our members first.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to hear from, or let me check, is there any additional business to bring up? Seeing none, I'd like to ask Marcia for the winners in the competitions.
Oh, all right. So for our table topics winner this evening, I'd like to announce our guest, Manoush, was our winner. And last but not least, our big three winner for this evening would be is, right? Margaret Marion, did I say that correctly? Would be Karen. Congratulations. Righty.
Thank you, Marcia.
You.
And we didn't vote, obviously, for the best evaluator, but I think John Vessels did an excellent job. And we appreciated Rob's speech too. Technically, he would not have been available to win in a competition since it was just a little bit long, but definitely we enjoyed his speech. And I want to encourage Carolyn and Munish, any questions you have about the club, any interest in joining us, you are totally welcome, whether in this forum or sometime in the future. So definitely appreciate it again, your visiting tonight. And let me check. I do not see or perceive any additional business. So thank you all for attending, and everyone have a great weekend. Be safe.
Okay, good night.
Bye, everybody.
And if anyone, especially our guests, would like to hang around for a little bit and talk, we will be here. As Zoom coordinator, I'm about to stop the recording in 3, 2,